More left-wing bullying. How fun. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about firearms, because it's been a while. We're also going to talk about left-wing lobby groups bullying the crap out of people in order to encroach upon your freedoms, because yay for 2019. So this afternoon I was poking around Reddit, like most other children of the internet, and came upon a pro-gun subreddit. I mean, there are a lot of those anyway, but I came upon one in particular. Because, you know, I like the shooty sticks. During my adventure of this subreddit, I came upon an interesting piece of information. Not one that necessarily surprised me, and that definitely will not surprise any of you, but one that I think you should be aware of nevertheless. Some of you already will have seen my video about left-wing lobby groups bullying banks and financial institutions into banning and barring the far right from doing business with them. Recently, some of these groups were trying to bully credit card companies into complying with far-left ideologies. Fun. If you have not already seen that video, it might give this video a little bit more context, so I'll try to do one of the little eye things up here, but also I will link it in the description box. Now, when I was researching for that video, what I didn't realize at the time was that these left-wing lobby groups are also trying to pressure financial institutions and banks to basically stop doing business with the gun industry. These anti-gun organizations are basically, in short, trying to have banks adopt their anti-gun policies and, dare I say, put firearm-related business out of business. And I found a website all about it called Is Your Bank Loaded? I don't know if my bank is loaded, but I can certainly tell you about other things that are. Sydney, this is why no one can take you anywhere. Real talk for a second, these people are as totalitarian as your mum during Christmas dinner. You know, when she's all like, sit at the table, don't fight with your siblings.
I'll ground you for all eternity.
And really, at this point, you're thinking, Sydney, why are you telling us this and why do I care? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. But first, let's look at one of the main lobby groups and the website in question. So, Is Your Bank Loaded? This website has basically taken all the major banks in the United States, or at least I think they're all the major banks, and then given them an alphabetical rating or a grade that basically determines how active or inactive they are when it comes to gun policy. Not creepy at all. Banks like BB&T, for example, have received an F rating, which I'm sure they care about, because they have invested millions in the gun industry, have no public policy on doing business with the gun industry, and contribute to the NRA's top recipients of campaign contributions in Congress. Towards the bottom of each of these ratings, the website actually gives you an option to go and bully that bank into changing their position. After clicking through the website a little bit, it doesn't appear that there are any banks with a higher rating than a B. I guess that's because nobody's taken a big ol' sip of that Kool-Aid yet. Yet. Being the operative word. It appears that there's only one bank that has a B rating, and that's Citibank, because apparently they have taken steps to build a future with fewer guns by significantly limiting its exposure to the firearm industry. However, the bank must strengthen its policy against doing business with all gun manufacturers and stop contributing to the NRA's top recipients of campaign contributors in Congress. Because really, who even cares about personal freedom and enterprise? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this whole situation basically exemplifies why the regressive left don't run businesses, and why they'll always be someone else's employee. Take away the shooty sticks. Nobody needs exploding metal that's like protected by legislation. Am I right, guys? Now, the objective of Is Your Gun Loaded is multifaceted, and if I'm completely honest, totally hilarious. We know that banks and their leaders are disgusted by the high number of gun deaths devastating their customers and the communities they serve. Yeah, that's a good one, Susan. Are you also disgusted by obesity? You know, that epidemic that happens to be killing considerably more people than firearms annually? We only care about saving people if it destroys the Second Amendment. But financial institutions are in the unique position of providing financial services to the firearm industry and can use that as leverage to change its dangerous behavior. So, much like other left-wing lobby groups, what they're really saying here is, do the thing that I want you to do exactly in the way I want you to do it, otherwise I'm going to bully you relentlessly until you go out of business. Got it. Now, in order for these banks to improve their crappy ratings, which I'm sure all of them really care about, they must do the following things. 1. stop doing business with any gun or ammunition manufacturers until the products they produce are regulated for safety by the government. 2. Pledge to invest a portion of your profits from any past business with gun manufacturers into gun buyback programs or survivor funds in the communities you serve. No. Can I just add here that buyback programs do not work? Thank you for showing us that, Australia. 3. Require all retailers to transmit details of gun sales and flag suspicious purchases of firearms, particularly if they come from bad apple gun dealers. Pledge to release data on this activity quarterly. More surveillance and control. I like it. I'm really getting that totalitarian mum at Christmas dinner vibe. So basically, in addition to hurting the Second Amendment, they also want to infringe your privacy. 4. Pledge to end all political donations to NRA-backed and endorsed state or federal lawmakers or political candidates. 5. Pledge to meet with gun violence prevention groups at least 4 times a year and work to reduce gun deaths in your community. Gun violence prevention groups, huh? You know that this kid runs one of those, right? I mean, it's a no from me. I don't trust the regressive left, and actually, to be honest with you, most Democratic politicians as it is. So why on earth would anybody, even your bank, give them the opportunity for surveillance and more anti-gun legislation? I need a drink. Now, objectively, I can see why many of you probably don't even think this is that big of a deal. But when you start looking into the groups that are affiliated with this website, there's cause for concern. Isn't there always? For starters, one of the main lobby groups affiliated with this website, called Guns Down America, have already launched numerous campaigns, even just in the last year, that basically seek to ban guns at polling places and ask people to report others with firearms. And, unsurprisingly, like most other anti-gun groups, they have targeted companies and businesses and shops to stop associating with the NRA, in addition to also bullying advertisers and asking people yet again to send emails to them to ask them also to stop doing business with the NRA. You don't need to tell me twice. I know that basically every anti-gun group under the sun has been attacking the NRA since forever. This is not new. But here is why, in addition to caring about this issue, people also need to be aware. When I saw that Is Your Bank Loaded and Guns Down America are associated with another group called Color of Change, I realized
Houston, we have a problem.
Color of Change were a main cause for concern in my other video about left-wing lobbying and bullying and whatever, because they successfully force financial institutions to engage and stop associating with particular groups, organizations, and basically the right-wing, far-right ideology. You know, like that time where they forced MasterCard to have a shareholder meeting so that they could potentially create a human rights committee that would basically surveil people and make sure that people on the far right weren't using their services. Yeah. And if Color of Change, alongside Guns Down America and all these other anti-gun groups, suddenly start bullying financial institutions, I know that eventually they're going to start making headway. Even just in the last week, during a congressional hearing, the CEO of BB&T was asked, basically, if he would be changing any of the policies in the company to reflect anti-gun policies. And hilariously, he was basically like, no. Obviously, the major issue here is that these groups are trying to actively undermine the Second Amendment in the United States. And in the same vein as so many other left-wing lobby groups, they're attacking a legal practice at the source. Money. At least in my humble opinion, the problem is that it only takes one sympathetic ear inside these institutions to get the ball rolling on something like this. And that is hugely problematic. I mean, overall, it's less clear how woke these banks happen to be, because it seems like they're more interested in actual business than activism. But you never know how far they'll go once pushed. Something worth noting here is that if these initiatives do actually happen to work and banks start adopting anti-gun policies for whatever reason, at least we know that it is possible to survive in the business world without financial institutions and banks. Because let's remember, the marijuana industry has actually survived pretty okay under the same circumstances, because under federal law it's still illegal, which means that banks and financial institutions won't deal with it. So at least we know that, at least to some extent, there's some sort of a blueprint of how this would go if banks become super woke. You know, weird example, but like, there's that. In the end, I find most initiatives like this very disconcerting and worrying, and I believe that they deserve way more airtime. Because while on the surface it seems like they want to stop gun deaths, the reality is that they make absolutely no secret about the fact that what they actually want is fewer guns and to weaken the gun industry and by extension the Second Amendment, by going after anyone and everyone who supports it. And I'll say it again. There are so many laws and regulations already surrounding gun control. At what point do we stop focusing on legislation and start addressing the underlying reasons for gun violence? Now I pass the buck to you. Where do you stand on the gun control debate, and what do you make of these lobby groups? Do you think that they're right in their pursuits? Do you think that anti-gun policy is the way to go? And what do you think these banks will do in the end? Will they eventually give in? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.